Take 4. Action. So you came back for more, huh? They always come back for more. Psh. So basically for this tutorial, it's gonna be showing you how I did the sculpting and the molding and the casting for my Leviathan prosthetic, which you see here. This is not why you came here, then you should probably abort this mission right now. Get out while you can. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna put that right there. Let's try that again, shall we? So basically for this video, I'm gonna be showing you the sculpting, molding, and casting processes for my Leviathan prosthetic. If that's not what you came to see, then you might wanna avert your eyeballs, but I'll try to make it worth watching. Close enough. I don't even know why you guys come here. I really don't. But I'm grateful that you do. Feel free to come back. Dick Ronan is a douche. Just throwing that out there. Blech. So without further ado, let's get our creep on. So to start off, we are just going to be roughing in our sculpt. So we're just throwing some clay onto our mannequin. So as you can see here, we got the basic outline of our lips, and then I went in and put in some gums. And now I'm putting in like the hard palette, is probably the technical term. And I know that I want my Leviathan to have a really large tongue that I'm sculpting off screen because I'm not used to sculpting on a table. Usually I cradle my bust in my lap. And now we're going in and we're adding some gum holes. Gummy, gummy. We're just using the back of one of our clay tools and pressing it in closer towards the surface so it has that raised ridge like human gums do, because it just gives it more of a realistic effect, which is awesome. And now we're just inserting some of our teeth, and basically I just rolled out these little triangles and pounded them flat on one side, and boom, just like that you have a tooth. And I'm going to be taking these out later, but I just kind of wanted to see if the monster was going in the direction that I wanted it to, so I jumped the gun and put the teeth in a little too early. So now we're just going in and smoothing out the clay around the edges and giving it more of a defined shape. So our roughing in process is done. So now we're going over it with our rake tool, and this really levels out the clay and it adds a lot of different textures, and it gets rid of any clay that is unnecessarily there and all the bumpy clay parts. Yeah. So now we're adding some roof of the mouth texture and a little dividey line of our tongue. Do tongues have that line? Yeah. So now we're just playing with fire because who doesn't enjoy doing that? It first off makes the clay easier to work with because monster clay hardens after a while because you have to use heat to get it to be pliable, and after a while it hardens back up. And it also gives the clay a really smooth finish that you can't really achieve with your tools, so I like to do it. I like to do it. Now we're just going in, adding some additional textures and then burning those off because why not? So when you're sculpting, you want to make sure that there's no holes between your sculpt and like under the tongue before it touches the lip. You want to make sure there's not any space there because the plaster will get in that hole and then it'll just mess up the whole sculpture. I've done this before and it was devastating. Now we're just taking some time out to do a Snapchat because social media is life. Now we're going in and adding some skin texture, which I like to do. Texturize. So we're just using a variety of different sized rake tools to add different skin textures. And now I went in and added a couple skin textures with a texture stamp from Monster Makers, which they are fantastic. You can make your own, but I'm lazy. Now we're going in and adding some ridges for our lips because our Leviathan needs some chapstick. So now our teeth are back in because we're reaching the end. So we're just going in and adding some texture to them teethers. Now we're going in with some, okay, so what you're supposed to use is naphtha. What I'm using is paint thinner. Make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area so that you don't die. I have fans running. Say hello to my dad in the background. He's very happy to be in this video. But yeah, so we're going in with some paint thinner. This adds some additional smoothing that you can't really achieve with your tools. And it just makes it look so clean and pretty, and I love it. And my friend says that I'm gonna get hand cancer, but this time I used a brush and tried not to touch it with my hands. And now you have made a masterpiece, Leviathan, and you can put it on your face. Isn't she beautiful? See, the problem with this is, if you look at it, like, that looks pretty intimidating. And then you put it on my face and my ginormous head, and it's super tiny. Look at that. Oh. Alright, so now it's time to mold this puppy. Let's go. So we're just going through and putting on a coat of Vaseline so that it's pretty easily demoldable. You want to make sure that you don't do this too thickly, so I'm wiping off any excess because you don't want to obscure any of that detail that you sculpted into your piece. So now we're just building up those clay walls, and I'm using some wet clay. Little trivia for you, wet clay stands for Walter Elias Disney because it was used in his shop. So we're just going through and building those around, and I was almost out of this, so my walls are super thin, and I was super nervous the whole time that they were going to collapse and ruin the whole thing. But yeah, you're just kind of building those up, and you're making sure that they're close as possible to the bust so there's no space, so that none of the Ultra Cal can leak out and ruin everything. So now we're just mixing up some Ultra Cal, and the way I was always taught is that you take some warm water and you pour the Ultra Cal in until it forms an island in the water so it stops sinking. But once you get used to doing it, you kind of get a feel for the consistency that you want, and you get used to it and you just know what to do. Like, it's hard to describe. You just know the texture that you want and you get a feel for it as you do it. So you learn by doing. This is really true, especially for molding. So it's been a while since I molded anything, so this is actually a bit thinner than I wanted, but I made it work. Just when you work with it and it's this thin, it has a tendency to run everywhere and all over your mother's kitchen counter. But it's fine because she's sleeping and has no idea that you did that. Typically I'd put a bag underneath of it, but I didn't this time. So what you want to do typically for your first few layers, you want to have your detail layer, and if you see me duck my head really weird, it's because I'm blowing out any bubbles to make sure that they're not captured in the mold and mess up the details and mess up the mold. You can also use the canned air that you use to spray out your keyboards. I don't have any, but if I did, I would totally use that. Or you can use your airbrush if you have one, but I didn't feel like digging that out. So you want to begin by adding 3 layers, so 2 additional layers after your detail layer is done. I actually end up adding like 5 because of the way that the teeth stood out. I didn't want the burlap, once I added it to the mold, to crush the teeth, so this is the 5 layers down, and now I'm adding some burlap. So you just take some burlap, dip it into the Ultra Cal, and lay a couple strips across, and a couple strips overlapping those the other way. So like a hashtag pattern, a little bit. I don't actually know what you call that pattern. So now that you have that laid down, you're just going to take some super thick Ultra Cal and lay that on top to cover up the burlap. And now you are done. And you're just going to go through and smooth it out so it looks all pretty, and when the mold hardens, it doesn't cut up your hand. So now it's time to practice our skills at professional wrestling. So we're just digging out the clay around our mold and breaking off any of those little sharp pieces. Okay, I use some kitchen knives to do this because they're super thin and they get into the crevices really well. I have broken a few, so it's a set that we don't use in our kitchen anymore, so my mom won't get mad. And this mold actually came off really easily, so that's a plus. Sometimes it takes a long time to get it off. Anyway, so now we're just gonna clean out our clay, which is gonna take hours, and you're gonna hate your life just a little bit, but it's fine. So we're just using a combination of wooden tools to clean out that clay. Since my latex was old, it was pretty much drying as soon as it hit my mold. I couldn't get it to sink into the teeth holes of my mold, so I just poured it in and stabbed it with a brush, and it still didn't really work that well and left me with teeth nubbins, so that's why I sculpted them out of Bondo, which you saw in the first video if you watched it, and if you didn't, you should. So now we're just powdering our prosthetic and pulling it out of our mold. And we see our nubbins. Little nubbins. Nubbins need lovin's too. So there's our finished prosthetic once I resculpted the teeth with Bondo. And there's our painted prosthetic. Isn't it pretty? So pretty. Now we're trying our hand as America's Next Top Leviathan. And now you're a spooky Leviathan. Though those edges are a little terrible, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not happy with them. But it happened. I'm not perfect. So hopefully you learned a little something about how to make a creepy, spooky, scary Leviathan. Ooh. And if you didn't, well, I'm sorry. But I tried. That's all that matters, right? That's what my mother always told me. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments below. You rock. Get your creep on. Okay. Okay. Cut. We're done. Oh, these edges though. Yeah. I'm just gonna hide the edges of my hair because it's too hard to fix them when I can't see. If you like what you saw, feel free to check out my other video over here. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get my latest videos as soon as they're posted. Awesome possum. See you later.